The Senate President is in the House.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Alrighty, are you recovered? Is there any more turkey left in the fridge? If it is, like, forget it. I mean, it's like, come on. No more sandwiches. Move on, move on. Great to have you aboard. Thanks very much. I'm not yet ready to start fa la 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 la. Can we get to December 1st? You know, at least the PCURI game, and you know, and then it's Advent. You know, do you get the old calendars? I used to love as a kid the calendar. December 1st that starts. So this is a tweener week. Everybody just chill, relax. Great to have you aboard. The Senate President is in the House, and we've got a lot to talk about. And I'm going to waylay any conversations from the national or big local scene. But I did want to make a mention of something that was incredibly touching to me over the course of this past weekend. Headlines here from some of the local coverage of Chief Fred Stanley's dedication. He's seen here with his family. I actually went down and took a little of my own video of this operation. This is at the Wyoming Valley Fire Station, where Chief Stanley served, Fred Stanley, 51 years in service to the community. And his daughter had let me know that this dedication was going on. Chief Stanley had been a guest on this program a year ago. His health is failing, and he's not in great shape. And what was incredible is that there have been so many things that have been dedicated to his service, including this incredible ceremony, which was just the best of Americana. And then outside, as the chief sitting there in his wheelchair sees the unveiling of his name, they grab that piece of tape to make it clean, of course. But it was just the most precious Americana, good feeling, life well lived event that I have been to in a long time. You see how many firefighters turned out and fire chiefs from around the state, and the townspeople came out, and you know, they had shuttles running up and down Route 138 and 3 to get people there, and then they had a nice spread, and it was just everything that is great about the country, the state of Rhode Island, and more specifically him. And the chief, you'll hear the conversation on the radio at 6:30 WPR.com. It really isn't made for television, but the audio that I have, the conversation I had with the chief about what this all meant, he's very aware that his time on this planet is waning, and every day is precious. And what he said was, amongst other things, that he was just so happy to have had that respect from the community and to be alive to see it. Congratulations to him, his family, and you know, Chief, thank you for your service. You're a great American. Alrighty, we got a big news story here that's kind of crawled up behind us. Sports betting in this state is legal. It's not like it's been hidden, but it's been kind of a slow evolving thing. And this afternoon, now we taped this program at 1 in the afternoon. And at 3 o'clock, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House are making their ceremonial first bets. We'll see what their action's all about, but for charity. They're really hustling at Twin River to get this whole thing done. Remember what the Speaker said at the budget session this past summer.
We're in sports gaming earlier than a lot of other states, and we have a better percentage for the taxpayers than any state that's doing it right now.
Yeah, the Senate President has been supportive of this. And of course, there are 2 branches of our General Assembly that we'd like to remind you about. And the Senate President has been very aggressive to make sure that you know that there's more than just one body deliberating on these issues. Happy Thanksgiving, almost Merry Christmas. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. Same to you. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a good one.
Yes, you too. The challenge of the sports betting thing has been to get it up. You know, you and I have had a little disagreement about it. It's not a small disagreement. It's a significant disagreement, but it's not a philosophical disagreement on the actual sports betting thing. I think this thing needed a referendum. Your lawyers didn't think so. So you legislated this thing up, and it's going to happen at Twin River and Tiverton in pieces because we're behind schedule, right?
That's correct.
So by the time you've seen this, you already went to the ceremonies. I'm sure you've probably seen 6 o'clock newses or 11 o'clock newses, depending on how you see the show, about today's events. What's your overall thought process about this decision to go to sports gambling and the process by which we've gotten it going?
Okay, I'm going to take it back. When I was in the House in 1982, there was a piece of legislation sponsored on sports gaming. And at that time, the sponsor asked me if I would kind of pay attention to the legislation, see where it goes, provide some research for it, and I did that. Subsequent to that, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and anyone who could hire an attorney came in, and they were opposed to that legislation at that time. There were more lawyers in the room on that day than there were people testifying on the legislation. Fast forward to 1992. I was looking to put a gaming casino in Providence, down in the Wharf area at the time, which would have hosted also sports gaming. That didn't go well. The mayor was against it at that time. Then 10 years later, I submitted a piece of legislation again, and then I was informed that because of the Supreme Court ruling, you couldn't have gaming. Only certain states could have that. I did a lot more research. I went to a conference where everyone said that they felt that the Supreme Court was going to take it up, the U.S. Supreme Court was going to take up the issue, and they felt that it was going to pass. I informed the administration of that at the time and said, let's get ready. I want to submit legislation, and hopefully that'll pass, which it did. Now I'm looking to do mobile gaming because I think that's going to be a convenience for everyone. It's going to sports betting provides a whole new form of entertainment. 97% of the money bet in this country is bet illegally, either through offshore organizations or somebody who knows a guy. So that's the reason why I want
bookie.
You might say that, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason why I submitted the legislation. I thought we had a great a chance of deriving some substantial revenue over something that's already been done illegally.
All right. So there's no doubt that you've harnessed this one. I don't know. I have conflicted thoughts about it. I don't know how. You know, are you a Patriots fan?
I'm a New York Giants fan.
You're a Giant fan. Oh, well, okay. So why don't we just end the show right now? Because the Senate President and I are going to go commiserate. We're going to go to the bar, drink some shots, and try to see if we can figure out what the hell is going on. How did we lose that game yesterday, by the way? I mean, how did we lose that game? I thought we were going to run the table. Anyway, as a Giant fan, I get very emotionally involved. I don't know why. You could study me psychologically as to why. The fan that gets really involved in the outcome of their favorite team's performance, 10 years down the road, 3 years, I don't know, do they start just worrying about whether or not they covered or whether they won a championship? Did you ever think about that part of it? I don't know that that's regulatable. I don't know that that's legislative conversation, but I have a hard time wrapping myself around that.
Well, first of all, I'm a Giant fan because long before
because you're a masochist, or at least in the last 6 or 7 years.
I do have sadomasochistic tendencies.
Well,
yes.
there you go.
But
why don't we talk about that, Mr. President?
We'll talk about that later. But I was always a Giant fan only because they were here before the Patriots.
Right, I get that. Yeah. Well,
so.
But don't you? Do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. The conflict.
And then there are other people who think, you know what? Well, you know what? It's America. You do what you want with your money. Bada bang. I don't know. Do you think that when it's legal that will you regularly make a bet on the Giants? Will you do that, or any game? Do you think that's the kind of thing? Will you look at it differently? I'm talking about you as a citizen, not as an elected official.
I just feel that if people are out there doing it, the state should at least garner the revenue.
What about the idea that it's a different platform and it should have had a referendum? I think you're going to probably get sued by somebody. No one's told me that, but someone's going to take litigation on here and say that this, you know, the philosophy is one thing, but the process by which you got here was faulty.
Well, it fell under that particular class of licensing, as you and I have discussed this before.
Right.
And that was included in the table game issue, so that was automatically included. To say I have gotten dozens, hundreds of calls on people asking when this is going to start up.
Can't wait.
There's a tremendous amount of interest in it.
No, there's no doubt
and
about
I've never
that.
heard anyone say, you know, you shouldn't have that. I mean, look, people are going to do what they're going to do.
Well,
when they want to do
let's
it.
about the revenue. The governor, I think, well, now that we got the backstory, I can see why $25 million was in the budget, because you were pushing her, but it's her decision to put it in, and it was faulty. I mean, at best, you're going to get is maybe 10, 12, maybe 15 million out of this fiscal year. And obviously, Twin River's hustling. They're going to put it on the 3rd floor right now until they get the downstairs fixed, and then it'll be timbered in. So clearly, they feel a sense of urgency. But what they haven't done, I don't think they've done a very good job of explaining what's there to bet. I mean, you know, what are the parlays? What are the, you know, what's allowed? What's not allowed? The local colleges, you can't bet on the local colleges, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, and we should talk about that down the line. As you know, why is that a good decision? I think it's a good decision. But do you know exactly what games are going to be available in terms of, I mean, methods of gambling?
It's my understanding they're going to start off with the regular, you bet the team, and then you could bet the over-under, things like that. Then they are going to introduce what we call the exotic bets.
Right.
After that,
it's going to take a while.
It's going to take a little while, but I think it's probably a good situation right now where people come in and just make those bets on those 3 or 4 areas that they can make the bets on, because I think they'll get used to coming in there, and then they can start with the exotic bets later on.
Do you worry about our reliance on gaming
not
in
anymore.
general?
Not anymore. We have a tremendous reliance on gaming. We've had it for years. There's gaming that's gone on in the state, starting back with the lottery many years ago. I think it's been very successful. I think it's been very well regulated. I think they do a great job down there at the lottery, and I'm really enthusiastic to be able to work together with them.
All right. We'll talk about his election to lead the Senate and a couple of other issues when we come back. Stay with us.
We've had an open caucus for a couple of years, and I think that's the appropriate thing. I mean, people get elected here by their constituents, and I think it's important to have the transparency and the public be able to view as to what's happening with their government.
I always enjoy when I detect a little bit of this between the Senate and a little bit of this between the Senate and the House. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that an open caucus is at least a level of transparency that people respect. The Speaker, who had a tougher election than you did, by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
And has a progressive movement that is, in numbers, a little bit more formidable on the House side. You know, has had a tougher run and had a closed Democratic caucus for a leadership vote amongst the party. You open it up because
we felt that was the right thing to do. And I didn't open it up. Senator Teresa Piver-Weed, my predecessor, opened it up probably about 8 to 10 years ago. So she was on the lead. She was very supportive of transparency in the Senate, which I am, and I would say the vast majority of my colleagues in the Senate are.
So you have a little bit of a controversy, though, in terms of how the process goes. Senator Donna Nesselbush has been grabbing headlines on this conversation, and I get her point. She made it to me on the radio about a month ago.
The bill that I put in called for us to use a secret ballot because, you know, it's obvious to me that if in voting for leadership you use this roll call vote, that the real purpose of the roll call vote is just to know who's for you, who's against you, and then, you know, to reward those who are for you and punish those who are against you.
So there's two different dynamics. First is the caucus, where, you know, people just stand up and say who they're for, right? And then there's the actual constitutional, statutorily demanded vote, the formal vote in January, correct, to affirm you as leader. Her argument is any leader, not just you, any leader would have his thumb or her thumb on the rank and file because they have to be public about their support for you. Her idea is that a ballot, and she claims that the statutes are clear about it being a ballot for the January election. Here's the definition of ballot. We looked it up ourselves, Merriam-Webster, and the word secret comes up pretty continually. So that's her argument. Talk to me about that.
Okay,
By the way, she's coming in Thursday, and she'll make her case, but I would like to have you on the record in terms of what you think about this.
First of all, I don't think anything should be secret in government. I mean, we're elected by the people, and that's who we should be accountable to. I don't see why someone would object to voting by secret ballot when they're supposed to be representing their constituency. And if you look at some of the things we've done in the past...
You misspoke there. I want to make sure, because I know what your point is. You said object to secret ballot. You don't want to see a secret ballot.
I do not want a secret ballot. No, I am positively against a secret ballot.
The one dynamic that I think she's referring to, and I see it, even the public employee unions are problematic in the sense that they'll look for hand votes on, ratifying a contract or decision to make a, some kind of a job movement of some kind, and it's kind of like one of these things, and if you're not with the idea, there's a lot of pressure to it. It seems to me what she is saying is similar in the dynamic, and that is that we as constituents vote secretly at the ballot. We have a blinder and we put it in and we secretly, and we express our thought about leadership by ourselves. She wants to see the same thing happen in government and in the House of Representatives and the Senate. I don't know that that's a transparency violation. I think what she's saying is we need to be able to speak our minds without having retribution.
I don't know where the retribution comes in. It certainly hasn't come in on the Senate side. So just speaking for the Senate, for as long as I've been there, I have not seen that. I mean, if you could use the secret ballot issue on every single vote we take up there. Why don't we do secret ballots on every single vote we take? And there could be rewards and retributions as a result of voting not by secret ballot. So you could apply that theory to any part of
the citizens want to know how you stand on the issues.
And I think they want to know who you vote for. I think they want to know what you do up there because you're elected by them to serve their purpose up there, and I don't think they want votes in secret.
A Democrat votes no, she or anybody else votes no on you as Senate President. Do they immediately get a demotion? Do they lose chairmanships? Do they lose roles on commissions and on boards and on committees and that kind of a thing?
Well, I'm new here. This is the first time that I've been the Senate President for a full term.
Well, come on, you're not new to the process. Well, you are a veteran. You are a cagey old veteran there, Giant fan. So let's not pull that one.
I'm new to the presidency of the Senate. However, I worked very closely with the previous president of the Senate, and I watched how things shook out. I have never exacted any kind of retribution upon anyone for voting what you might call the wrong way. Look, we could go up there and 38 people will have different feelings about any piece of legislation up there. That's how it works. You can't help the variety and the diversity that exists up there. So, I mean, will they lose committees?
I think she'll point to Senator DuPont and others, and I'm not here to fight their battles. I'm just saying.
That was, you know what, I like to refer to this to inside politics or inside baseball, so to speak. I had a conversation with Senator DuPont. We had an understanding, and things didn't go well after that. Dan DuPont is a great friend of mine. I totally admire him. He was a great chair. It was just that it was political in that particular aspect.
All right. Well, we will. It is pretty predictable that you will be the Senate President formally in January, and based on that, we should talk about some issues when we come back, and we shall. Stay with us. Yeah, so you can, I don't know, you figure it out. You can buy pot in Massachusetts, but you can't smoke it on the street. You can bring it home. Don't bring it to Rhode Island, you get jammed up. But then again, it's a minor violation. Oy vey. This thing is going to come over, what? Where are you? What do you think?
Where am I? Right now, I'm going to wait and see. Look, I want to see what happens in Massachusetts. From what I understand, they're having something at some town tonight to decide how they're going to deal with the issue of having a facility located in their town. So I'm in a wait and see mode right now.
Well, they got two right now: Northampton and Leicester, and then there's at least another 3 or 4 that are ready to bust. you know, this was overwhelmingly supported by referendum in Massachusetts, but I think wisely, the state government pulled it back and said, okay, now we got to think about how this actually really works. We got issues of whether or not employers are still going to jam people up for blood testing. And
I have a lot of concerns.
There's a big picture of mess here.
I even have a lot of concerns with medical marijuana. I think it works. I think it helps people. I just think that they really don't have a handle on the number of plants that exist in the state right now. I've heard numbers from anywhere from 177,000 plants to 1 million plants. To me, that's a pretty big range. But that's medical marijuana. As far as the legalization that's occurring right now in Massachusetts, I want to take a wait and see. Look, I want to see what the issues are. I have big problems with that issue as far as toxicity of the substance, how you're going to deal with the school children, employment, people working with heavy equipment. I just think that I haven't seen enough yet to make a judicious decision at this point in time.
All right. Sometimes slow is smart. Set the agenda here. What is 2019 going to bring? What are you championing? What's on your chest?
One of my initiatives is mobile gaming within the state. I think we can generate a substantial amount.
This is your baby, huh?
I'm all over this. I've been on it since 1982, and I'm not getting off until the train stops.
Now, is that a referendum issue? Because mobile gaming then becomes a whole... you and I are going to really battle on that one. I mean, does that require a different process or just a piece of legislation?
I don't believe so, because I believe sports gaming...
Well, didn't you tell me that last time that you thought the mobile would require a referendum?
I thought some people were saying that. I mean, they were saying that about sports gaming.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't see it because there's a lot of... the two existing facilities, one in New Jersey and both in New Jersey, feel that wherever the server is, that's where that's like home plate.
People are going to love that because they're going to say, I don't want to just, you know, I used to be able to call my bookie. Now I got to drive to Twin River or Tiverton. That's what they're going to say. So,
well, if that passes, all they have to do is drive over the state line if they're in Massachusetts. If they're sitting at home in Cranston, Johnston, or wherever on the couch, they open up an account and they can put a bet in right from there. So they don't have to go to on the premises.
With new legislation?
Correct, yes,
right.
Yes.
All right, so you're going to push that early?
I am going to push that early, yes.
Okay, what else?
Because I think that's a tremendous revenue generator.
What else?
Even more than... as far as myself, I really don't have a big agenda yet. I'm looking at some things at this point in time. But
we got a $40 million fiscal deficit again. What is your thought process on that part?
Actually, I think the revenues are going to be up this year. I think we have a lot of things happening. I think...
so you project it'll reconcile?
I think so. I think we can make up some money from other areas. I think we have to look at our expenses, especially as it relates to human services, because with the UHIP issue going on, I mean, I'm really worried. I think there could be a potential for a lot of fraud involved in that, in those particular agencies.
You confident Governor Raimondo is going to get a handle on this?
Yes, I am.
What gives you that confidence?
Well, first of all, I didn't think it was her problem initially. It was the previous governor's issue. It was handled wrong. It was handled wrong from the onset. And I don't believe that all those agencies should be wrapped up into one. I think there are so many significant problems in each and every individual one that they should be separate. So right. That was a mistake.
Come on the radio. We'll talk to you about the Paw Sox thing. We're out of time for that. 5 seconds, though. Big missed right through our hands, right?
Blew it. Huge miss, and it's going to resonate for years. I believe it.
You worked hard on it.
And you know what, Dan? We had the best site in the world. That is an absolutely fabulous site.
The Senate President. Thanks.
Thank you.
Be right back. All righty, so the Senate President's message is clear. He's about this gaming, you know, to help this budget along, and it'll be really interesting to see what the sports gaming thing is going to be all about. We will have, by the way, in terms of the process of electing leadership, Senator Donna Nesselbush is scheduled, I believe, for the Thursday program this week to discuss that. Great to have you aboard this week. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the radio at 3 on WPRO and back here tomorrow night. Good night.